All right, what's up, everybody? Question for today is going to be this: should you get the dot and magnifier setup for your rifle, or should you get the LPVO and offset red dot? Which one is the best choice for you? Now, I think the easiest way to attack this is to essentially talk about like the pros and cons to each. I'm not here to tell you guys like how to spend your hard-earned money, but I do feel like it is useful to know the pros and cons of each. Maybe you're in the market for, a different optic and you really don't know like, hey, which one should I pick? So that's kind of what I wanted to go over here, just to give you guys a little bit more, knowledge on like what each one does and maybe the pros and cons to each. So we'll go over the dot magnifier first. So I think, this is definitely one that, like, if you ask me in a class of mine, like, which one should I get? I would most likely recommend the dot magnifier setup. Now, up front, the majority of people in my classes, probably like 60 to 70% at this point, are going to be law enforcement. And so I think, the dot magnifier setup for law enforcement where they are not really engaging past 100 yards, it's like, yeah, there's some of that out there. But if you really look at the data, it's like the majority of it is closer up stuff. And to me, it's like that's where the dot is going to shine and the magnifier is definitely going to shine. So, some of the pros of this one, this is hands down the easier one to set up. It's way easier. And the reason is like I take this dot out of the box and there's this 1/2 inch bolt right here. I screw it on per the manufacturer's torque specs, and then I take this magnifier out of the box and it has this like QD arm on it right here, and I just close that QD arm once I stick it on the rail, kind of like that, and it's like, now I'm ready to shred, right? So I think this setup in particular is way easier in comparison to, anyway, setting up an LPVO and offset red dot. It's also easier to zero this thing, right? Like zero the red dot, flip the magnifier over, make sure your dot is in the center of the glass, check your zero. If nothing's moved, it's like it's good to go, right? So it's way easier to zero this particular one. If we're zeroing a LPVO and offset red dot, it's like now I have two optics to zero. I have to make sure the red dot is actually flat when I'm zeroing, etc. So there's a little bit more that goes into the LPVO and red dot setup. So I think, again, this one, the dot and magnifier is most certainly going to be the easiest setup to get going on, right? The other pro that I see to having a dot magnifier setup is target focus. Now, whenever you're shooting a 1x optic, you are trying to target focus. Like that should be the goal for pretty much everyone. And what I have found in my own training anyway, is I can target focus with the red dot out at further distances, right? 50, 60, 70 yards. And I think the reason that is, I could target focus better with the red dot opposed to a LPVO. And I think the reason that I can target focus at further distances with the red dot opposed to the LPVO is this. The red dot is a little bit further away from my face. There's not as much optic body around it. Therefore, my eyes can see basically past the red dot. I can look through the red dot and put both of my eyes on the target and have the dot just basically in the background. I find the red dot to be a whole lot easier to use, probably 25 yards and beyond, 25 to like 50. I find the red dot to be easier to target focus with, and I can shoot more aggressively because of that. That is where the LPVO, in my opinion, there's a con to it, and that is this. The optic is going to be closer to your face. It's a whole lot larger body, and yeah, it's 1x, but it ain't the same 1x as a red dot. Therefore, this one, 25 yards to 50 yards, is going to be a little bit harder, to target focus. And what I have found is like the right eye looking through the tube just essentially takes over, and I can't really target focus anymore. It's like I have to shoot a little bit more reactively with the LPVO at those distances. At least this is what I've found in my training anyway. So target focus is going to be easier with the red dot. Now, where this setup starts to not be as good anymore as this. It's like, yeah, you can see further with the magnifier, and yes, you can make hits out at 3, 4, 500 yards for sure. But is that the tool for that specific job? And I think the answer is no. And the answer is no because it's like, yeah, you can see stuff, but the field of view with a magnifier, especially comparing it to this particular scope, like the Collis K16i, which is like awesome. The field of view in comparison to that scope is like complete trash. You don't see much looking at, especially at the closer mid ranges, right? 150, 200 yards. This 3X zooms in and you only see like this, right? Whereas the scope, yeah, it zooms in, but you see way, way more at further distances. And it makes it to where it's like I could shoot more aggressively at those distances with the LPVO zoomed in than I could with the magnifier, right? Because the magnifier, since you see less with it flipped over, it's like when you fire the gun, then you have to be very, very particular with where the gun returns because you're seeing less, right? And so I think that is definitely a con to the magnifier. And you just don't have the field of view. The other thing about the magnifier setup is you will not have the type of eye relief that you will get out of a good 1:6, 1:8, or 1:10. Right, the eye relief on the magnifiers is most certainly going to be shorter. Right, I think the eye relief on this Trijicon 3X, it's probably around 2.5 inches, right, which is not that much at all. Now, I kind of use that to my advantage where I have a little bit of black around the where I'm focusing through the middle of the tube, and I think having a little bit of black around the edges, making sure that you have the exact same amount of black around the edges will help you, because it's like that tells me that my eye is centered in the optic itself and I'm free of parallax. If I have a bunch of black off to one side, a bunch of scope shadow off to one side, it's like my eye is not centered, and that, you know, that's usually happening from like people that don't have a very good mount just yet, right? But like that is definitely one thing that you can look for with the magnifier setup. That will tell you if your eyeball is centered in the target. I would say the other con to the dot magnifier setup is there is no reticle, right? Like in this particular dot, like I have one reticle, and that is just a single 1 MOA dot. And, you know, is that a deal breaker at distance? No, but like I can't really be as particular or as precise as I could with an LPVO that actually has, you know, a reticle that is designed for shooting at further distances, right? Even the SIG Romeo 4T dots, like you can choose different reticle options, and that's kind of why I like that dot a lot. Like I can choose, I want to say it's 4 dots and a circle. Like the bottom of the circle when it was on this gun is 650 yards. So like I can have holds, however, it's still not as precise as, you know, what say this optic is going to be. So this optic is a Collis K16i. It's got the SM1 reticle in it, which is a mil reticle. So mil reticle, mil turrets. And basically what I can do with this thing is get a good zero on it. More on that here in a second. Get a good zero on it, chronograph the thing, punch it into a ballistic calculator on my phone, and then go out and basically do my homework, experiment with what that phone is telling me where the holds are, and just basically true everything in terms of like where the reticle is, what my holds are with that particular ammo. Like I can get a lot of data on this thing. Not that you can't get data on a dot magnifier. This is always going to be more precise, right? Like this is built for shooting at further distances. And what I find is like this reticle in particular, the bottom of the circle is 2.5 mils, right? 2.5 mils is 400 yards. So it's like, I don't really need to, you know, have this mil reticle in here until after 400 yards, right? Inside of 400, it's basically just like put the circle over the plate and pull the trigger. So it's like this reticle also makes a lot of that really, really easy. Now, where this comes into play in terms of like being very handy is past 400 yards, right? If I want to hit out at like 550, right? I'm gonna hold 4 mils. This is a 12-inch gun or 12.5-inch gun, right? It might be a little bit less with, you know, a 14.5 or 16. You just have to check it out. But like with this gun, I'm gonna hold 4 mils for 550 yards. So it's like I can zoom in this reticle or zoom in the scope, look for 4 mils, put that on the target, pull the trigger, and get hits very, very consistently. And that is partly due to how precise the reticle in these LPVOs are. So in my opinion, it's like if you're gonna be shooting out to, say, you know, 500 and maybe 500, 600, 700 yards, the LPVO is gonna be awesome for you, especially if you're gonna be shooting inside of that as well. Like, you have options with the LPVO. The other thing that the LPVO does really good, by the way, is just the field of view, right? The field of view at further distances, you're just going to have more. It just makes it easier. But again, the reticle is like, this is what is going to make, you know, beyond 400 yards a whole lot easier for you. The other thing that I think is a whole lot easier about the LPVO is you can, since it has a wider field of view, it seems like you could see more. And where this came in really handy for me, it's like my first 3-gun match, I was crazy and I shot it with a dot magnifier. And now I'm crazy because we were shooting out to like 450 yards. And I thought like, oh, I've made hits out to 450 yards, like I'll be just fine, right? However, when I made hits out to 450 yards with a dot magnifier setup, that was like white steel freshly painted in the sun, right? At a 3-gun match, at least the one that I was shooting, it's like we had steel that, you know, maybe they painted it that morning, but they hadn't painted it since, and it was gray and just kind of really blended in. And that thing might be at 200 yards and in the shade or in a tree line, and it's like looking through the dot magnifier is like, dude, Godspeed. Like, I just cannot see where the hell that plate is. And then I would shoot it, and because there's a real lack of field of view, it's like if the gun moved at all, I'm stuck trying to find this stupid plate again, and it's really difficult, right? That's where the LPVO, in my opinion, is going to shine. Stuff like that, you know, with this thing being 6X, you know, and the field of view that it has, it makes finding stuff like that way, way easier. Also having that lit reticle inside of this, like against a, you know, a target that might be, you know, like they painted it that morning and it's no longer painted and it's kind of like clapped out in the shade or whatever. Having that lit reticle so your black reticle doesn't disappear on that thing, like that comes in very, very handy too. Now, where would you use, or why would you want a dot on the side of a, you know, a 1-2 whatever? This is where I think kind of the gaming aspect comes into it, right? Like if I'm shooting at, like I'll give you the same example, shooting at 200 and say I'm on 4X or 6X, that's pretty much what everyone does, either one or nothing, right? I'm on 6X and I'm shooting targets, steel out at 200, and then the next 10 targets in the array are 20 yards and in. Well, is it faster to come off of this scope and then have to, you know, push over to 1X and then remount the gun? Or even if you do stay mounted, like, you know, push it over and then get to work? Or is it faster to come off of the scope and then just roll the gun into a red dot and then start shooting the closer targets? For sure, that is significantly faster every single time. Now, I do think there are some cons to that. And the con being, you know, zeroing this thing for one, like I think that is going to give some people trouble anyway. And I say that because like you want, whenever you zero, you want optics to be completely level with the ground, right? Like you wouldn't want to zero this scope with the gun being canted like that. Like you're not going to get an accurate zero. Same thing can be said for offset red dots. So like if this thing, if the bottom of this red dot, right, is not parallel to the ground, like you are not going to have a very accurate zero. And like, yep, this might be like super nerd stuff, but if you're going to be engaging, you know, several targets at, you know, further distances, I think that this stuff is very, very applicable. Like you have to have a good zero on both of these. And like here's one of the biggest reasons. I think most people think about, you know, like up close shooting, like, oh, it's just a big ass open target. What if you're in a match and then you have that? This is your target, right? And that is at 15. But you don't have a really good zero on your offset red dot because when you zeroed it, you canned it. Or like the bottom of the dot was cannoned in one direction or another, so it's like it's not really that good of a zero. Could possibly tag a no-shoot. It's like, I don't want that to happen. So I'm very, very particular when I zero any gun, but these guns or this type of setup, like very, very particular. I will like take all the time in the world to zero this particular type of setup because I understand how precise each of these needs to be, right? I think another con to this type of optic setup is setting this thing up on your rifle, okay? Now, I say that because I see these things in classes all the time, and I'm like, that is not set up properly, sir. Like, I want to pull it off to the side and help this person set up their scope and like re-zero it and figure this thing out. But, you know, again, like the dot magnifier, I can take out of the box, plop it on the rifle, go zero it, and good to go. This thing, I have to level it inside of this scope mount, torque it down to the appropriate specs, torque it down appropriately as well. Like you don't want to just torque one side, torque that all the way down, and then come on this other side and torque that all the way down because it's going to be putting different pressure, maybe more pressure on one side of the scope than others. You know, you could get very, very nerdy in terms of how to mount an LPVO properly. Some like PRS shooters will probably like chime in here. It's like, yeah, like you need to do this like big long bunch of steps to actually mount that thing appropriately. I think there's a lot that goes into it. The other thing that people mess up on scopes is the diopter will be all the way closed. You can adjust this diopter, like this thing will unscrew and screw in. And usually when you get these things, they will be all the way closed in. And then if you mount the gun, it's like, man, that looks like pure trash. I can't really see the reticle, can't really see the target. That's where adjusting this diopter to your eyes is like, that is a necessity. You have to do that on these things. So again, there's just more to it that goes into setting up an LPVO and offset red dot opposed to setting up a dot magnifier, right? If that sort of thing, if you're like, man, I am not handy like that, maybe have a buddy who is handy and knows how to set up scopes, like let him set it up on your rifle. The other thing that I see people screw up too is like where they put this thing on the rail. Like I've seen people put scopes, like the back of the scope is like way back here, right? Because they mount it and they only do this. Like they'll stand up, right, and look through it. Maybe they crank it up to 6 and they're like, oh yeah, I can still see through it. And then when you drop down the prone or in a weird position and your face is pushed a little bit further forward, it's like, now I can't do anything, right? Because I have to push my face further back because I only mounted this thing and I only looked through it while I was mounting it standing up, right? So like before you actually lock everything in place in regards to like where the scope is on the rail, like you should probably mount it while you're standing. Put it on 1X, put it on 6X. Maybe mount it on a barricade, put it on 1, put it on 6, go down to prone. See where this thing needs to be. What is the optimal position for this optic to be? So there you go, man. I feel like I covered pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. And again, I just want to give you guys kind of the pros and cons to each one. I'm not partial to one or the other. I would just pick the one that I needed for the particular job that I was going to do, right? If I'm going to go shoot 3-gun stuff or PCSL stuff, like this is probably the move, right? The dot and LPVO setup. If your range, if all you have available to you is maybe 100 yards or maybe 50 yards, something like that, or your job, like what you have going on at your job is like law enforcement stuff, it's like, all right, probably the dot magnifier is going to be the move for you, right? So anyway, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them in the comment box below. As always, happy to answer them for you.